I bought this sketchbook for only one simple reason. A family member gifted me a bunch of alcohol markers, and I needed a sketchbook that would not bleed through. Hi, I'm Arati, and this is the Rendr sketchbook. Its claim to fame is that you can use it with all media, and I have found that to be mostly true, as you will find out during the course of the sketchbook tour. But the main thing about it is that it does have no show-through paper. So let's go through my sketchbook, which I have completed from October of 2023 to 2024 March. I use the sketchbook only for Zoom drawing sessions, which basically means that I join a Zoom session, the host has some reference pictures and gives us a particular time limit for each of them, and we all draw the same thing, but in our own individual styles. It really helps me to build skill to draw things that I don't normally draw. And that's why I keep a specific sketchbook for this kind of drawing rather than mixing it in with my regular sketches. The first thing I do in all of my sketchbooks, aside from having an opening page with the start date and the end date, I didn't do very much to this because quite frankly, by the end of this book, I was quite sick of alcohol markers, is do a test page. And since the primary aim of this sketchbook was to see whether alcohol markers bled through or not, that is exactly what I did. And you can see here from these pages that I scrubbed and the alcohol marker does not bleed through. These marks have been made with quite some force, and I tried layering markers as well as trying different media on top of the alcohol markers as well. I did swatch all the colors of the alcohol markers that were given to me, but they have since found a better home because I will not be using alcohol markers again. I am not an alcohol marker artist. I don't use them in my regular work. I did also test other different media in the sketchbook, and pencil works really beautifully. It does smudge just like it does on regular paper. This is super white paper, so if you prefer the Royal Talents cream paper, maybe the sketchbook is not for you. But if you don't mind white paper, and of course the alcohol marker colors do come out perfectly well and nice and bright on this, then you might consider this for other media, which I will show you on the next page. Here I tested out acrylic inks, acrylic gouache, and various other media on top of it. The background here is done in watercolor, and I would say that is probably the only medium that I would not recommend using in this sketchbook because the paper seems to sort of repel it and it does warp slightly. None of the other media warped any of the paper, but the watercolor did. I was really pleased with how acrylic inks worked, and then I added some super matte medium over the bottom here so you can see it's not shiny at all. There's just plain acrylic ink in the middle, and I added some matte fluid medium on the top, which is slightly less matte than the super matte medium. The super matte medium, other things work right on top of it, just like the Posca, Karen markers, and Neo colors and Neo arts, just as well as they do on top of the acrylic gouache, which has a slightly matte texture to it. And I would be happy to use any of these mediums on this sketchbook. The last medium I tested on it was gouache and a bunch of the other pencils and markers that I tend to use. A bunch of Neo arts, Neo colors, and pastels up the top. And then I've got some Poscas, some Tombos, the Karen markers, and ink. And over here I've got some gouache. This is regular gouache, not acrylic gouache, in 3 different swatches. I wanted to see the blendability on this paper, as well as how other materials work on top, because that's how I work. I work in layers and add detail through adding other media. And then I decided to do a test page with just crayons, mostly Neo colors, and some pencils of my dog, just to experiment and see how this paper works if I was just doing some casual sketching in it. Here's where the bulk of the work in this sketchbook starts off. I began with the first Zoom session, which was a Halloween session with Odd Orange Stationery. I have talked about their Zoom sessions before, and those are the most regular ones I attend, along with April of Monkey Mintaka, and I'm also on Sarah Dyer's Patreon for this year, so I attend her Zooms as well. All of the pages in this book are done with alcohol markers, with a layering over of pencils and other markers as well. And then partway through this book, I switch over to Tombow markers. There's not really much to say about the drawings themselves. They are really quick sketches, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 minutes for that one. It's a question of how quickly you can draw, how quickly you can get the sense of the reference image that you're drawing from. I'm not somebody who draws regularly from reference images except in these Zoom sessions, so it's great practice for me to figure out how to draw from life and how to interpret it as an illustration in my sketchbook. I might afterwards take inspiration from these for something else, but never as an actual copy of what I've drawn in here because these are from somebody's references. I'm not always happy with the things that I draw in here, but it is for practice, and that is what a sketchbook is all about. I've seen a few videos lately. I think Katie Moody put out one where somebody told her she wasn't using her sketchbook the right way. The only right way to use a sketchbook is to use the sketchbook. Levels of skill can determine exactly what you draw in your sketchbook. My quick sketches might not look like a beginner's quick sketches because I've been drawing for 46 years. Some people use a sketchbook to do basic drawings to figure out their later work. Some people make finished drawings in their sketchbook because they might be averse to using separate sheets of paper or doing a finished piece of work, and they'd rather do it in their sketchbook. It feels safer to them. That said, every sketchbook, whether it is an art book with finished pieces or something like this with just quick sketches, is a place of learning. It's somewhere that you figure out exactly what you are doing with your drawing, and from here you might jump off to a different point and make some finished art. The only wrong way to use a sketchbook is to not use it at all. This was a session with Sketch Appeal where they gave us characteristics and we had to draw based on that. So this was maleficent horns, small body and long legs. And this one was pointy feet, wobbly arms and huge ears. So I might do this exercise again. It was quite fun. On this one, we're back to Odd Orange and the theme was ceramics. Various different ceramics from around the world. I really love these teapots. I said 8 minutes, so I think it was probably 8 minutes for each of them. The China dogs, 12 minutes I think for all of them, and then another 12 minutes for these ones. You can see here that I'm literally using 2 colors and some pencil because by this point I was pretty clear that the alcohol marker style was not for me. And that's just not the way that I work. I'm not quite sure why there's a sticky thing here, but let's just get rid of that and carry on with the sketchbook. I do like these China dogs a lot, and I feel like this is a theme that I would like to explore further and see where it can take me. More China dogs and some patterns here. These cups were in the references, but then I got more interested in the patterns that were on some of the other cups in the references. I can't quite remember what I was doing now. But these things are designs that caught my eye and that I might take forward in the future. This was the end of that session. And then this was with April of Monkey Mintaka, her Patreon video, which was an Africa session, African animals. I went back to alcohol markers for this one, and there were some Tombow markers as well mixed in. I probably should have written down exactly what I used, but in these quick sessions, you don't always have the time. In some of them, I put the color down and the pencil, but I don't remember whether I used Tombows or whether I used alcohol markers, because as you can see, there's literally no bleed through on these pages at all. In that sense, this sketchbook works beautifully. I hadn't drawn animals in a while, so this was a really good practice session, and I'm quite happy with how that monochrome zebra came out. I kept drawing in monochrome-ish colors. I just was feeling it that day, I guess. The kudu in particular I was quite happy with. I do feel like I should have left some highlight in the eyes, but I could probably put a dot of acrylic paint on there. And that was the last one from that session. And here we are again back to Odd Orange. It was a winter landscape session. I can't remember if they were film stills or just landscapes, but I did enjoy it. And this was a night one. Haven't drawn a night scene in a really long time. That's another thing I really probably should practice. This is another Odd Orange session, which was a Christmas session. And I just kind of amalgamated everything into one page. I do really enjoy doing this kind of thing. It gives me more satisfaction than doing plain spreads like this, where I'm just drawing references rather than combining them into a cohesive whole. This starts to look almost like a whole scene that I'm drawing. And if you look on my channel, there is actually a mixed media zine that I did in one of the Odd Orange sessions. I will link it for you up in the cards and down in the description box below as well, where I did this kind of thing, combining all the references onto one sheet of paper and then turning it into a folded zine. The other reason I really enjoy this page is the cohesiveness in terms of color. It's mainly line drawing with some gray pen in order to give it some dimension. Highlights in red and yellow. So the primary highlight is red, and then the yellow is just for a little bit of pop of color here and there. I would probably have used gold paint if I was doing this as a separate piece rather than the yellow, but in a quick session you need something that will dry quickly. I think the red was probably alcohol marker and the yellow was Winsor & Newton marker perhaps? That was at the end of 2023, and I did the entire session in this page and this page. I really love these baubles as well. I definitely had an idea to turn them into a Christmas card, maybe with a cat sort of batting at them. That would be fun, I think. I draw my sister's black cat a lot, so maybe like a paw batting at the ornaments would be great fun. This was another April of Monkey Mintaka Patreon. We were drawing buildings. I'm not a huge fan of drawing buildings, but again, it's about getting out of your comfort zone and drawing things that you're not used to drawing. So from the first drawing to the last drawing, there's already a massive improvement within that session itself. And then I can take what I learned from that session into the next session, or when I'm drawing outside somewhere by myself, and apply those lessons. So first drawing, second drawing, again, already improvement in that. There's more detail in this in just 2 minutes more. And I feel that this is a more realistic, believable building than that one is. More buildings. Again, you can see that my hand is not so sure as I am perhaps when I'm drawing something like this, because this is something I'm more used to drawing, of course, with my dog people and everything. And yet I'm persevering, and I feel like I learned a lot from these, especially about perspective and depth. Definitely should have had a darker color for these buildings in the front to bring them out more. I think I didn't have enough time to complete the background of this, but sometimes you just need to take an element out of the reference and just draw that. Each of these was 10 minutes. On each page, you can probably go back and pause and see if you want to check out how much time each drawing took me. This was the last one in that session. And then here we are with Odd Orange again, doing stationery. I really enjoyed this session, because I like drawing little bits and bobs and going more into the detail of things rather than drawing the overall big picture of stuff. Like, I much prefer little things like this to this. And you can also see that in my camera roll on my phone. There's always more detailed photographs of things rather than a bigger picture of a landscape or a scene or things like that. I'm usually taking pictures of like buds and little textures on the road rather than the actual road and the place itself. These were a combination of, I think, Posca pens and Karen markers and Tombows. Yeah, I really enjoyed this session. Some of these were in collections of things and we were just drawing some of them. Really enjoyed this page as well. Different kinds of paper clips. I did end up ordering something quite similar to that. I just thought they were really fun. And tape dispensers. I don't think I've ever looked so closely at a tape dispenser before. And that's also the fun of it, is looking at things and figuring out exactly how to draw them when you've never drawn them before. The ink bottle was good fun. Again, I used acrylic markers on this to get that texture. Glass pens. More pens and bottles. This was another April of Monkey Mintaka Patreon session on interiors. I wouldn't say this one was particularly successful, but oh well. I did enjoy this one. Not quite sure why I have so many stickies. I must have marked some pages for something, scanning or something like that. But yeah, great fun. Of course, my dog people are everywhere. This one was a reference from Wallace and Gromit, one of my favorite animations. Again, I seem to do a lot of monochrome stuff in the sketchbook. I just feel like maybe I was in a phase of that at this point in time. Another dog person and a cat. This was an interesting session. This one was with Holly Surplus, whose sessions I join once in a while. And it was about preparing characters. And in this particular session, we were doing love story thumbnails. I can't remember the exact premise of the session, but that's basically what it was. You were deciding on a character and then using shapes of that character, using the silhouettes of it, and then trying to work out that character in more detail, fleshing it out, and then creating a thumbnail of stories. This is all we had time for, and I was fully well-intentioned to complete this story, which I never really did. But I guess at some point I will complete these and finish off the story and actually make a little zine or a book or something about it. At this point in the sketchbook tour, you can probably see the one reason why I would not buy this sketchbook again. I have a thing about sketchbooks lying flat. So for example, if I get up and I go and I get some materials and I come back and want to work, I don't want my sketchbook standing up like this. I want it to lie absolutely flat, and this sketchbook does not, unfortunately, do that. This, even if I try and break the spine, it never lies completely flat, especially at the beginning here. Everything just seems to pop up, and at the end as well. It just, yeah, that's something that is a non-negotiable in my sketchbooks. I must have a sketchbook that lies flat for me to work in. So that is the one and only reason I would not rebuy this sketchbook. Otherwise, It's beautiful. The paper does not bleed through. It's a good quality, solid sketchbook. The binding has not given way in all the months that I was using it. All media, except maybe watercolor, work really well on it. No complaints, except for the fact that it does not lie flat. But anyway, that's the deal breaker for me. Coming back to the actual drawing in the sketchbook, this was an Odd Orange insect session. Not my favorite things, but again, like I said, you have to draw things that you don't like drawing in order to understand them and make yourself a better artist. I feel like, again, from the beginning towards the end of the session, there was an improvement. And then the next time I drew an insect in one of the sessions, which was the woodland session, it was far better than the first ones that I'd drawn. This fox, again, need more practice drawing foxes. Not a very successful drawing, but oh well, you win some, you lose some. Using markers with pencil overlays, both a combination of Tombows. I think there were some acrylic markers in here as well, watercolor markers, pencil over the top. Trees are one of my favorite things to draw. As you can see, I spent way more time on these trees than I probably did on anything else in the sketchbook. I really love the way they came out as well. Love this foggy feeling forest also. And I have used this as kind of jumping off point for work that I've been doing ever since then. Birds, not my favorite thing to draw, but ever since I did that Birdfest challenge, it's really helped me understand how birds look and how to draw them. This is another favorite page, mainly because of the color choices as well as this particular deer. I really feel like I got the essence of that particular reference picture, and even by itself I think it's a fairly successful drawing, whereas this one, slightly out of proportion, but I did the best I could in the time that I had, which was 6 minutes. Again, another bird, but also continuing with the monochrome theme in this sketchbook. I feel like I am constantly doing things over these pages, last pages, where the colors are minimal, but the feeling of the piece is more in keeping with whatever I was trying to express at the time. This was April's Maki Mintakas Patreon again. We're doing landscapes. This was continuous line. I really can't tell what I was drawing. I think they're mountains. But that's the thing about continuous line, is that it's just being in the moment and drawing what you see. Continuing in that landscape session, more about value and contrast, not really using realistic colors as such. I think this was a picture from her Edinburgh trip. Line work for this one. This one was shape blocking, so she was just using different techniques in order to get us to draw buildings. Again, like I said, these sessions really help you with things. So compared to this session where I was drawing buildings, if you look at this session, I feel like there's a massive improvement even between these. So when was this? This was in December of 2023, and here we are in February of 2024. So just a few months later, and I feel like I am drawing buildings much more confidently than I was back here. So yeah, the learning is it's almost subconscious. You don't necessarily understand while you're doing this because they're quick sketches, 10 minutes for each of these, with quite a lot of detail, and you have to understand what you take out of it in terms of learning, what you leave out of it in terms of actually drawing, because there was much more detail here, but you can't put it all in 10 minutes. More landscape in 2 different color palettes. So these ones here, the same landscape in 2 different color palettes, I mean to say. More landscapes again, really like that one. And then this one also, I enjoy how I did the rain with Winsor & Newton watercolor marker here. This is an Odd Orange session, drawing greyhounds and whippets. All of the sessions in this book are available either on April's Patreon or on the Odd Orange website as workshops to buy and download. I think the Holly Surplus one probably is not available anymore, but the rest of them are if you want to download them and draw along. I'll put the links down in the description box below as always. Some of these are more successful than others, like I don't know what's happening with this dog. It's just his bum is too low, his legs are just off, his face is off, everything is off. But then this one, really like him. And then this dog, I'm not quite sure why I did half of him. Where's the rest of the dog? But anyway, by this time I had given up on markers and I was just drawing in pencil here. Again, difficult pose, but quite happy with how that came out. Like this dog, but not this dog. I'm not quite sure what happened there. And if you're wondering why this paw is coming out, I was just correcting that paw because I drew it wrong and then I was just trying to figure it out at that point. I think this is the last session in this book. It was April of Monkey Mintaka. It was a session on space. Really enjoyed this one. And this is possibly my favorite page in this book because, of course, I turned the astronauts into dogs. I think these were from film stills. I can't remember now. I probably should have written it down. But yeah, definitely my favorite page in this entire sketchbook. And the last page was a rocket taking off and this weird thing from some film again. I'm not a big film watcher, so I can't really tell you the names of the movies. But if you go and watch April's Patreon session of this, you'll probably be able to find it. And that is the final page. I just did some color testing on these final pages because these last pages never really sit right, do they? But overall, I would say that this is a really good sketchbook if you work with markers or any other media except for watercolor. If you're scanning from these pages, there's literally no show through whatsoever. No matter how much marker I use, even here where I've used water, nothing has come through onto the other side. So in terms of that, a very good sketchbook. But for me, I wouldn't rebuy it simply because it doesn't lie flat. That is my overall review of the sketchbook. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want more sketchbook tours, go and watch this video next. Thanks for watching. Bye!